Welcome. Welcome everyone. We say Bruchot Habaot. Welcome everybody. And special welcome to our guests. Right? This is take your daughter and granddaughter to school with you today. So thanks, right? Our daughter Becky is here. And she's going to be watching because she learned Gemara in Bruriya. So we better do a good job today. So we're going to get into some interesting concepts today.
Mendel, shut your phone off. Not mine. Oh, it's not yours, I apologize.
You better apologize.
It sounded like
to
it was
me.
coming from here.
Gee, I might have to.
So first of all, we are, if you're on the Hebrew side, it's page Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. The two dots means the second side. And there is a number on the top, page 202 in the corner. So if you're opening the book from the right side, it's page 202 or Kuf Aleph from the base. If you're using the English, means you're opening it from the left side. We're on page 221, and it's the last. It is the last paragraph on the page. Aval, right? And this. Remember last time I gave you a little phrase to tell your grandchildren. I'm going to give you another one today, and you're going to see it. They will be so impressed that you know this.
Wait, what was the last one? I forgot.
The last one was Psik Reisha V'lo Yamos.
Okay.
That means if you cut off his head, he's not going to die. So this one we're going to get to it towards the end. You know what it is. Okay, so that's great.
And
Okay, I can still teach you something. So you're going to get it. Okay, so we're Zman, right? It's Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman. We'll get to that.
I thought that's why.
Right. And that's why you have the one photocopy sheet. It's going to show you where that actually comes into play. In today's Gemara, we're going to be trying to figure out the statements of people who we don't actually accept their opinion in the end. And so the most prominent one is Rav Yochanan, and we're going to show how his opinion is being refuted. So people often ask, well, why, after all, we're here, we want to know the law, we want to know it's correct. Why do we spend so much time talking about people or talking about opinions that we don't accept in the end? And the point is that this is built on discussion, debate. Remember we said it's a search for the truth. And so sometimes someone will offer an opinion, we don't accept the opinion, but it's in the Gemara anyway. And the reason is that this was done a couple thousand years ago. All along the way, if all they said was the final conclusion, someone could come along and say, well, how about if we do it this way? And then if you don't have an answer to that, you could create a whole situation. So the answer is, yeah, good idea, but Rabbi Yochanan advanced the same idea, and this is why we refuted his opinion. So that's why you're going to get opinions both ways, and then we'll come to a conclusion. But those opinions that we do not accept remain inside the Gemara. Okay? So we've been talking about a situation where we started our meal, and for whatever reason, we got up from the meal, or we went somewhere else, and we're continuing to eat. So then the question is, if we started to eat in this room, for example, and now we went downstairs into, I don't know, the new auditorium when we finally get permission to use it. Halavai, right? So, right. So, it's a good one. So you hear what you said? You said B'meir Rabbi Yameinu. Okay. So if we're eating here, and then we leave and we go to another part of the building, or to another building, and we're going to continue eating. So the question is, do we need to make a bracha acharona if what we had was ragalach, or if we've had a full meal, do we have to bench, and then we start with new brachas in the other location, or do we just say, since the type of food that we're eating normally requires us to make a bracha acharona, which means either alamichya or benching, The fact that we got up and we didn't make that final bracha indicates we're continuing our meal, and therefore we don't need to make the concluding bracha or our new bracha in the new location. So that's the question that we're dealing with. And so we're if you're in the Hebrew part, we're 4 lines up from the bottom on 202, right, which is Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. And if you're starting from the English side, it's page 221, the last paragraph, which starts with Aval. Okay? So the Gemara says, Aval halohi nichu sham zaken ochole. So suppose we have a group of people, and we don't all leave. We don't all go out to go to the new location. We left someone behind. So typically they would leave behind somebody who's not well, he doesn't feel well, or it's too much effort for him to go, but he's going to stay behind. So in that case, he says, if we did not leave someone behind when we left our original location, then we need to make the ending bracha, right? The bracha acharona, the concluding bracha. And when they either return to their original location or start again somewhere else, you need to make a new bracha. And the theory is that by the fact that we left behind someone, we indicate we're intending to come back. So we haven't finished our meal, we're intending to come back and continue. Okay? So kasha Rav Chisda. So that is a problem according to Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda said, and we had this last time, that if you leave from one location, go to another and continue the meal, you never need to have that bracha charona or the bracha rishon. You don't need that. And now the Gemara said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's only in a case where you didn't leave someone behind, which means if you did not leave anybody behind, you would need to make those brachos. And that seems to be a problem with what Rav Chisda had to say.
Shouldn't you bench when you finish the meal wherever you are?
So if your meal is finished, that's the issue really. That basically what you said is what the whole thing boils down to. If I'm eating over here, and now I get up, have I completed my meal? And when I go to the new location, I'm starting a new meal, or am I continuing the same meal? Okay. So an example would be, we're sitting at a table over here, and we're eating, and then I'm the president, right? I'm supposed to mingle with everybody. So we get up and we sit down with another group of people. So have I ended my meal? I'm in the same room, I'm with the same group of people. That's pretty obvious, right? I have not ended my meal. But suppose I get up and I go into another totally different room, or I go into the clubhouse or somewhere else, and I start eating again. So what have I done? Have I ended this meal and started a new one, or have I continued with the same one that I started with? So if you say that, Rita?
The same facility is one thing, but going to different facilities is another thing.
So that's the question. We made a shinui. We changed. So we had the issue of if I change the type of wine that I'm drinking, that's one, or if I change my makom, I change where I am eating.
So when do we bench?
So we bench according to what she said, which is true. When our meal is over, we bench. But the question is, when we move from one location to another, have we ended our meal, which would require us now to bench?
No, you didn't end the meal. You know what the menu is. You know you didn't have dessert yet, so you didn't end the meal.
Okay, so you agree with Rav Chisda.
But it makes sense. I mean,
That's Rav Chisda's point.
When you finish the meal.
Right. So,
One
but
more question. You
sure.
see, let's say you're at the same table with people, and you're sitting here, and then you move to another seat. Are you allowed to bench on the other seat, or do you have to go back to your original?
you were in the same table.
Same table.
So most likely you should go back. If you could, you go back to where you started to eat. But here we're talking about a bigger move than that. And so Rav Chisda says what you said basically, that is. Yeah.
No matter if you change it.
Before you start the meal, before you make the bracha,
you have in mind to finish the meal in another place,
right?
then you are allowed to. You have in mind to start here and finish someplace else.
Right. So what we're saying is that we don't really know what your intention is,
But
and
my
by
attention is, this is my attention.
right. So if I'm an observer, I see what's going on. I'm not eating because I have my Invisalign in, so I'm not going to eat anything today. So I'm just watching what's going on, and I see you get up and you leave the room, and I didn't notice your bench yet. So I'm wondering, why did you do that, right? So maybe it's because you hold like Rav Chisda, who says you don't have to worry about that, or maybe you had in your mind that you were going to eat your meal in various places. You're going to finish up, but there is a ruling that where you have eaten is where you should make that bracha. So it's questionable what's actually taking place, and the fact that Rabbi Yehuda came along and said these rules apply in terms of not making a bracha acharona and not making a new bracha only when someone was left behind. It was a group of people and someone was left behind. So then I know what you're thinking. Then I know you're intending to come back, right? Because you wouldn't have left your old mother there, if you weren't going to come back and pick her up later, right? So you're intending to come back. So, okay, so that's what I said. That's Rita.
Is there a time limit involved? Say you're at a wedding, you're at a shmor, you're
Right.
eating and you're having a great time. There's a chuppah, there's dancing, there's a ton of stuff going on before you get to your meal.
Right.
So, do you have to make the bracha achrona before you leave the shmor?
So there is a discussion about that. What Rita's asking is, I started to eat the meal, and now I've spent a lot of time in, let's say the perfect example is a wedding, and the chuppah is taking a long time until I get back to sit down and continue with my meal. A period of time has elapsed. Am I required now to make my ending bracha or benching if I've washed for the chopped liver with the rye bread or whatever? So in that case, so we did discuss this, and what the conclusion is that as long as you're still feeling the effects of that meal and you're not feeling hungry for the next one, you could still bench. But if you've reached a point where you don't feel that meal anymore and now you're feeling hungry for the next meal, you probably should have benched by that time. So it's a question really at weddings, and I know some people will make the bracha acharona before they go into the chuppah because they don't really know what's going to be taking place, and also they don't necessarily hold with Rav Chisda's opinion that because the cocktail hour is going to be used going to be held in a different room, right? Or if I'm going to be at the chassan's tish, that's also in a totally different room. So there's that too. So these are actually practical dinim that apply to this. Marcia.
Okay, I have a question now, because this happened to us on Shabbos. We came home from shul, we davened in Hashkama. So we decided to have a little kiddush, because he was hungry. So he made...
You weren't hungry, only he was hungry.
And then he decided, we didn't know how long it could be from the time you made kiddush till lunch, till the regular meal.
Right.
So my husband decided to be on the safe side. He said, let's make kiddush and wash, which we did, and then we benched, and then an hour and a half later we sat down and we did kiddush again and washed and benched.
Sounds right.
But why, if this was like, we got home, let's say 9:30, 9:45 when he did kiddush, and then we sat down again at 11:45, was it necessary to have done kiddush and wash the second time?
So washing for sure, because it's a new meal. But kiddush. Was there anyone else in the house when you made?
No, it was him and I.
Just it was the two of you for kiddush here in shul and washing and everything, and then it was
No,
two.
it was kiddush at home. We don't stay for the kiddush here in shul.
So you had kiddush at home in the morning
Correct.
when you came home. You came home from shul after.
Yes,
So Marcia and Gary went to the Hashkama Minyan.
right,
They went home. They made kiddush and washed and ate and had some bread, and you made it and then benched afterwards.
Right.
And then later, around noontime, you decided it was time for lunch. Let's have a proper
Right.
lunch, and you made kiddush again.
correct.
You probably didn't need to do that.
Okay.
Washing, yeah, you're making a new meal, you're having bread again, but
Oh,
the Kiddush, you've
okay.
made the Kiddush, you have declared today is Shabbos.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Very good, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
And
Relate that to my
Marshall's
husband.
case, that one meal is probably your Shalom meal.
Actually, yeah, that's the way it does
That's your
work
third
out.
meal, which Kiddush is not required, am I correct in that?
Yeah, right, we don't
Oh,
make
okay,
Kiddush.
so we didn't need a second Kiddush, thank you very much.
Okay.
But is there a time period between when you say Kiddush and wash till you have to bench?
That time period is, as long as you're still feeling the effect of that meal, then you can still bench. Once that passes, in other words,
There is not like a 72 minutes after you.
well, so they say like 72 minutes or something like that, but the actual standard is when you are still feeling that you're not feeling hungry for the next meal, you're
Okay.
still feeling the first meal. So you know, and there are differences of opinions as to how many minutes will elapse, but the basic principle is as long as you still feel that first meal, then you can bench there. Okay. So we said we've got a problem here, according to Rav Chisda, who said that you don't need to make a new bracha when you leave. Okay. So now Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is going to take up the cudgels and defend Rav Chisda. He says, Man Tana Akiros, who is it? Who is the Tana that says when you uproot yourself that you need to be making this new bracha? Rav Yehuda. It's Rav Yehuda, Dusanya, and he's going to quote a Braita for us. Remember, a Braita is written contemporaneously with the Mishnah, but it was not included in the main text of the Mishnah, but it's authoritative, similar to a Mishnah, which means Rav Chisda is an Amora, right? And he was operating like around 3rd century of Common Era. And he cannot dispute against the Braisa. If you have a Braita or a Mishnah, that's done by the Tanaim, right? They were, what, Marsha, between 50 before Common Era to about 200, right? That period of time. And if you have a statement that either it's written in the Mishnah or it's a Braita, which is, Braita means outside, but it's just outside of what was inside, but it's still just as authoritative relative to an Amora. So if Rav Chisda made a statement and we can show that there is a Braita which is in disagreement with what he said, so he is refuted because he does not have the authority, right, to argue with the previous generation. Okay, so we're going to bring a Braita, and the Braita says, Chaverim Shohayim Musubim. So we have a group of friends, hopefully we're all friends, and they're sitting together to have a meal. And again, remember this Musubim, that they didn't, their dining rooms were not like our dining rooms. Everyone had his own or her own little van or whatever, and they're reclining, and they're having their meal together. V'akru ragleihem, and they uprooted their feet, means they got up, leilech lebeis hakneses or lebeis hamidrash, and it came time to daven, or they had a special shir they were attending, whatever it was. So they interrupted their meal. They had not completed their meal, and they get up to go to shul or to go to the beis medrash. Okay, kishein yotzin, when they leave, according to this Braita, tu'unin bracha lemafreya, they must say the concluding bracha. Okay, v'chashein chosrin, and now they're going to come back to their original location and resume their meal. Ein tu'unin bracha lechatchila. So he says, did I leave a word out? Ein, right. So he says, when they leave, ein tu'unin bracha lemafreya, they do not need to make their concluding bracha. And when they return, according to the Braita, ein tu'unin bracha lechatchila, you do not need the preliminary bracha. And then here is our important statement, Amar Rav Yehuda. So now here's Rav Yehuda. B'amed devor mamrim. What are we talking about? What is the case that we're describing here? B'zman she'nichu sham mixas chaverim. When some of the group were left behind. Okay, which would mean that if they didn't leave some of the people behind, they probably would need, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to make that ending bracha, and then when they come back, make the new bracha, right? So, however, if they did not leave some of their friends behind, when they leave, they must make the concluding bracha, and when they return, okay, so says Rabbi Yehuda. Elataima. So what's the reason? He says, "B'devarim hatunim bracha lacharein b'makomon." Those items which require. So we said that there are certain items of food, for example, water or fruit or something like that, that do not require what's called a bracha chashuva, an important bracha, right? You knew that, right? That you make a bar nefashos after that. You don't make an alamichia. You don't bench after that. So that bracha, which is not a bracha chashuva, that's a different story. But those items which do require that bracha chashuva, for example, the ragalach that you had, or if you washed for a meal, you're required to make this. So in that case, the fact that you left and you know you have to bench and you didn't bench, that indicates you're coming back, right? But with types of food that you don't have to make that more or less elaborate bracha, the fact that you got up, that doesn't indicate you're coming back, because you could very quickly mumble under your breath the bar nefashos and you're off and running, right? So those things that do not require this bracha after them, in that case, it says ein tuna bracha lemafreya u'shein chozer ein tuna bracha lemachatchila. So aval devarim she'ein tuna bracha lacharein b'makom. Those things which do not need this bracha kashuva, afilu l'rabbanan, even according to the rabbanan, the first opinion in our brayta, kishein yotzin tuna bracha lemafreya v'chashein chozer tuna bracha lachachila. That case, so if what you had was an apple or something like that, and you do need to make that bracha, that bar nefashos before you get up. And if you were to come back, you make a new bracha. Lema tehevi tiyufta l'Rav Yochanan. So remember, Rav Yochanan said that we hit him, I think 2 weeks ago, that if there's a shinui, a change, whether you're having white wine, then you change to red wine, or you change the location where you are eating, he said you do not need to make these brachos. But we refuted them already. So he says, so again they say, is this not a refutation of Rav Yochanan? It says, V'lav mi usvine chada zimna, did we not refute his position already? And we did. So the Gemara says, well, why are we picking on Rav Yochanan now? We've got to hit the man while he's down. We already said that that we did not accept his opinion. So it's nema meha nami tehevivtu. So maybe from what we just learned, that serves the same purpose to refute Rav Yochanan's statement that if you change, you don't have to make this bracha, right? Amalach Rav Yochanan, but Rav Yochanan could say to you, because he's not here. They're in Bavel. Rav Yochanan most of the time was in Eretz Yisrael, but they say Rav Yochanan could say to you, and we talked about this. A lot of times it seems from the dialogue that people are all in the same room together. They could be separated by hundreds of miles and hundreds of years, but their opinions are being quoted as if there's a debate going on. So Rav Yochanan could say to you, "Hu adin dafilu devarim she'ein tunim bracha lachareim b'makomon, nami ein strichen levarach." So Rav Yochanan could say to you that even those items which do not need that bracha after them in their location, that they also don't need a bracha. So if you ate that apple, or you had a Coca-Cola or whatever, that maybe there you don't need to make a bracha either, and we know that you do. So therefore, if all we had was this statement of this Braita, where it's talking about the friends leaving and coming and so on, so we would not have a positive reputation for Rav Yochanan. Therefore, we needed the other statement. So the Katani akru raglein. So here we said that they uprooted their legs, means they got up to leave. That tells you how far Rabbi Yehuda goes. That Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the only case in which we do not need to make this bracha afterwards is if you left people behind. But if you didn't leave people behind, it would seem that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you would need to make that concluding bracha, and then when you started up, even if you came back to the same location, you would need to make that bracha again.
I have a question. Okay, if you forget to say the bracha, how much time do you have afterward to say it?
So we're in the same situation where if you're still feeling the effect of that meal, so if it's a small thing like the rugalach, you're not going to feel it for a very long time. So then you have to go by the time standard. which Marcia said, 72 minutes is sort of an accepted number. But the basic principle is that if you're not feeling the effect of that meal any longer, your time is passed. You missed your opportunity.
So then you just missed the bracha.
You missed the bracha, right?
Thank you.
Okay. So, yes,
So
Elaine.
what we have here is we're looking for this siman that's going to indicate that your intention is to come back. What if you're at a wedding and suddenly you find out they're davening Marav, and the whole table says, okay, let's go daven Marav and we'll come back and we'll finish the meal.
Right.
They've now made the proclamation that they're going to finish the meal. Is that adequate without leaving people behind?
Okay. What Elaine is bringing up is there really are two issues here. The one issue is what's my intention, and the other issue is what is my obligation, right? If I eat my meal, Marcia and Gary had their breakfast, kiddush, whatever it was, they're obligated to bench. Whether they intended to come back at 11:45 and eat again, that doesn't work. They have to bench after that meal. So same thing. Your meal is over. You have to bench. Then the other question is, have you finished your meal? If you haven't finished it and you're going to be coming back to it, that's our whole discussion. That's our whole discussion. So the intention is one thing, and then what actually has taken place is the other issue.
Right, but in this scenario, they
So-
haven't finished
Right.
and they're planning to come back,
Right.
but that minyan is happening
Right.
and they wanna go
Okay.
do the minyan and come back and finish, and they've announced that, but they don't leave anyone behind.
Okay. So then you have to also make sure how long is that minyan going to last. If it's just davening Marav, 10 minutes, you're going to come back. Then the other issues don't come into play, and you're going to come back. And so now, according to Rav Chisda and many of the others, you just come back. And by the way, that's halacha. You can go back and continue. You don't have to make that concluding bracha. You're going to be coming back to the same location, so you can continue. Tova?
I'm just curious, if you're invited for dessert to another unit.
I'm invited to this Shabbos.
Shabbos lunch dessert.
I'm not good enough to invite for lunch, but for dessert, I'm okay.
Right. And the thing is that, they depend on you from a Zoom on in the first, where you're going for dessert. You're going to be the 3rd, the 5th, the 9th, whatever it is.
Okay.
Okay? Now, you make Birkat Mazon Babayit or not?
I would make Birkat Hamazon Babayit.
So, and what happens in the Mzuman?
I'm permitted to answer even if I haven't eaten. So if we're sitting around having a meal and I didn't eat and comes along a group that want to bench together, I'm permitted to answer even if I haven't eaten. So that part doesn't come into play.
Okay.
Jill?
With the issue with an early kiddush and then a regular lunchtime, does it matter if the kiddush, during kiddush somebody washed the bread or not?
Would what matter?
In terms of the bracha and having to bench, the whole Birkas Hamazon after the kiddush, if you
So
didn't wash before you did
if you have not eaten, if all you had was the wine, so you
wine and mazonos, let's say.
right, so you're not benching because you haven't washed and had bread,
Right,
but you are going to make the bracha acharona on the wine and on the cake that you had or something. Yeah.
I just need any clarity.
Yeah. Okay. So here we are. So we're saying that that we want to indicate how far does Rav Yehuda go in his opinion, and he says that if the people left, they did not make the bracha afterwards, and when they came back, they did not need to make the bracha, provided that they left people behind. So is he saying that that's always the case, or is he basically is he disagreeing with the Tanakama? The Tanakama, the first Tana in our Braita, says that you do not need to make the bracha when you leave, and you do not need to make the bracha when you come back. And then comes Rabbi Yehuda, he says, provided. So is he basically explaining their position, or is he disagreeing with them? In other words, are they saying it doesn't matter if you leave anybody behind, don't leave anybody behind. You need to make your bracha before you don't need to make the bracha when you leave, you don't need to make it when you come back. He says that's only in that case. So it could be he's saying, he's clarifying their statement, or he's disagreeing with them. Okay? So we don't really know what he's doing. But the bottom line is, though, that if you are leaving, then and you demonstrate by leaving people behind, you do not need to make those brachos. Okay. So now we're still left with Rav Chisda. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is it then a bracha levatala if you make a bracha, and if you make the bracha achrona, is it considered a bracha levatala then? If you could have just
you can always make the bracha and then restart your meal, because then you're saying I'm finished here and I'm gonna start again, and so that's not a bracha levatala. No. The question is, did you need to do it? But it's certainly not a bracha levatala, because you have indicated that you're starting a new meal, right? And there's some people who bench before they have dessert, right? There are people who do that. So it's the same idea. Pardon?
Did you say you bench before you have dessert?
There's some people who do that. Yeah, some people do that. They consider dessert to be like a separate.
Where is the heter?
Well, you're always permitted to do it, but the question is, why do they do it? So they're considering that dessert is something extra beyond the regular meal, and then it was not on the table at the beginning of the meal. So maybe we'll get to that one day. But there are complicated rules about that. But I just wanted to point out. I don't know why I said it, but I did it. But why do I want to bring in something new? But there are people just because the question came up. There are people who actually do that.
Did you mean benched breakfast hamazon before dessert?
Some people do that.
Or just make the bracha over the dessert, which I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they benched already.
No, they didn't bench already. Tables I've been at.
Okay, now you have a new wrinkle. So now you have three different ways, right? So some people start with their kiddush and their motzi. They eat all through dessert, and then they bench. Some people finish the meal, aside from the bench, and then make the new bracha for dessert, and then the bracha corona. And some people do not bench, but they make a new bracha on the dessert, and then so those are complicated issues. And best thing is to do what your family custom is. Just continue to do it that way. Okay, so here we go. Again, we're trying to clarify what's going on with Rav Chisda. It says Tanya Kavasei Rav Chisda. So we're saying that Rav Chisda, he didn't pull this out of the air. So there is a braita that supports his position, and it says, okay, you have a group of people who got together to drink wine. They're not eating a regular meal, they're having wine together. And they got up, and then they came back. Do not need to make the bracha when they leave, do not need to make the bracha when they come back. So that sounds like Rav Chisda, right? Because Rav Chisda says that if you leave and come back, you don't need to make those brachas in between. Okay. So then we're sort of left with that. Tana Rabbanan. So the rabbis learned, B'nei Chabura Shaya Musubin V'Kiddush Aleim Hayom. Okay, here's a new situation. A group of us are sitting down to eat, and it's Friday afternoon, and the sun set. And here we are, it became Shabbos. Okay? What do we do? It's time to make Kiddush. Mevi'in lo kosher yayin. So they're going to end their meal, and they're going to start a new Shabbos meal. They bring, so the waiter will bring the cup of wine. V'omer alav kedushas hayom, and he says Kiddush on this cup of wine. V'sheni omer alav birkas hamazon. And now there'll be a second cup of wine for benching, because because you know a lot of people bench with a cup of wine. So they make 1 cup of wine for Kiddush and a second cup for benching. Okay? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So says our friend Rabbi Yehuda. He's back, right? He's saying that we're sitting down, we're having a meal together, comes time, becomes Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda says that you make Kiddush, then you bench, and you use a second cup. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says, Ochel v'holech ad shetechshach. Then he says you can keep eating until it gets dark. You don't have to interrupt your meal. And then, Gamru, they finish. Kos Risha Mavorach Olav Birkas Hamazon. That's different, right? So the first cup now, what do we do with the first cup? We bench on the first cup. Vasheni Omer Olav Kedushas Hayom. Now on the second cup, we make Kiddush. Okay?
Right, this is really confusing.
It doesn't mention that they ate the meal.
Not the 8th.
Birkat Hamazon just on
It's
wine.
It's Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon, we're eating together, and it became Shabbos. So now, what do? We certainly want to make Kiddush. It's Shabbos. We want to bench. We ate a meal. What do we do? What is the order of the operations that we're going to be performing? Right. So the first one, Rabbi Yehuda says that what happens is the first cup of wine he makes Kiddush. Then with the second cup he's going to bench. Okay, and he ate his meal. He ate the meal. So he's interrupting his meal to say Kiddush, right? And then he's going to bench. Because Shabbos arrived, I want to make Shabbos, I'm going to make Kiddush.
It was Mariv, they had to daven Mariv. What happened there?
Well, you can.
You're supposed to daven before.
Okay, that's. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But suppose they didn't daven Mariv, became Shabbos, and they want to make Kiddush.
Well, they obviously weren't helping their wives get ready for Shabbos.
Obviously, we're not helping their wives get ready for Shabbos, right? That's a whole other. Let's read it.
I understand why they have this whole scenario to begin with, because you're not supposed to drink or eat before Shabbos to begin with.
But if they
You're supposed to
did-
bring in the Shabbos with simcha, and you don't, I don't understand why this whole scenario is here.
Well,
Right,
if
so-
they keep drinking, they're gonna bring it in with simcha.
What would happen if somebody is sick and cannot eat very late? I have seen it. They'll eat before, they'll have the kiddush, and then they'll have the birkat hamazon. Because of sickness, they're not allowed to eat
Oh,
the
okay,
same time.
yeah, but that's different.
That doesn't give this example of sickness. I
But
don't understand
it
why
is. It is
So-
because
so-
of-
Oh, it's someone away.
Right. So what Rita is bringing up is what we discussed 6 weeks ago when it's the 7th week already. When we first started, we said that you need to enter Shabbos and Yom Tov
Hungry.
b'ta'ava. You have to enter with an appetite, right? Okay, so all I can say to you is that Mindel and I went out for a late afternoon lunch with Dave and Eva, and we got into a conversation because Dave and I are always going to have shul business to talk about, and somehow or other, here it is. It became Shabbos. We weren't paying attention. Now we're stuck now we have this issue we need to solve. We need to figure out what do we do?
Where'd you go? You really gotta walk home far.
Well, maybe we.
What kosher restaurant is open on Friday afternoon? That is a ridiculous scenario. Give us at least something that's.
Okay, so we went to
They're
the
in
tiki.
trouble.
We went to the tiki hut. We made a picnic on
Okay.
Friday afternoon. Okay, so we had a picnic at the tiki hut, and we're not paying attention because we're watching my grandchildren play shuffleboard over there, and whatever happened, it became Shabbos, and now we're stuck.
If there's a wife, it wouldn't happen. If this
I'm
is
saying Eva was there, and
getting
so were you.
along.
So I'm not letting you off so fast. So, but the point is that here it is. What do we do? So we have a difference of opinion over what we do, and we're going to leave it there because I did want to get to the initials because we do have some of the next generation, and for the rest of us, you can say to your grandchildren, This, Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman.
What is it?
What does that mean? So you have a photocopy in front of you.
What is that? What does that translate to?
It's Yud, Kuf, Nun, Hey, Zun. It's initials, and you say Yak Nahaz. So if you say to your grandchild, what's Yak Nahaz?
Yeah.
He's going to say, Bubby, how do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Nahaz.
Yak Nahaz.
Well, what does
Yak-
it mean?
Here's what it means. It means if you have a situation, and this is what I made a photocopy for you. The front part of it is from the Haggadah, and that is if the first night of Pesach is a Saturday night. Okay, so Saturday night we're obligated to make Havdalah, right? Because Shabbos is going out. We're entering into the holiday, so we need to make Kiddush, right? So now, what do? How do we figure out what comes first, and what do we actually say? Okay, so if you take a look at the page for the Haggadah, what it says on top, page 86, Haggadah Shel Pesach, right? So if you'll take a look, so first of all, the first paragraph, Yom HaShishi, you're not going to say, because that's only said Friday night. But then you're going to make the bracha, Borei Pir Gafen, that's Yain, right? That's our Yud, right? Then the next paragraph is Asher Bacha Abanu B'Kolam, that's Kiddush, right? So that's our Kuf, okay? Then we're going to say Borei Pir Eish, Borei Moro Eish, that is our Nun, that is Ner, candle, right? And then we're going to say Amavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol, and that is Havdalah, right? And then, so that's the Hey. And then last one is the Shechianu, that's Zman.
So how does this play
Into our whole scenario?
Yeah.
We're going to get to it next week, but I just wanted to bring it up today because we have some guests, and I wanted to give you something cute.
Yeah, Nahaz. Yeah, Nahaz.
We'll work on it. But okay, so now you have Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman, and on the flip side,
You're learning Gemara?
on the flip side of it, you have the same thing without the Shechianu, because the only Yom Tov that we have in the Jewish calendar where you say Kiddush, you do not say Shechianu, is Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach. It's a Yom Tov, but we don't say Shechianu. So that one is Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah, no Zman. So the obvious question is, what are we missing here in our Havdalah? Besamim, right? When we say Havdalah, right? We start out, we make the introductory part, right? And then we say Borei Pir Gafen, then we say Borei Mine Besamim, right? And then we say Borei Morei. So we didn't say Borei Mine Besamim. How come? Why do we leave it out? What? It's not Chol HaMoed. It's you're going from Shabbos into Yom Tov. It's not Chol HaMoed. So why did we not say what? So I'm gonna.
We don't need the Besamim, we usually take Besamim because if you're sad that the Shabbos is over, so here we go from Yom Tov to Pesach, it's a continuation.
I'm sorry, honey.
We're going from Kodesh to Kodesh.
We're going from Kodesh to Kodesh, right? But we do the flame, we do the yayin, we don't do the Besamim. Why not?
So good, you don't need any Besamim.
Why not? So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to leave you with that. And when you tell your grandkids about Yak Nahaz, you can ask them why you don't see them. Okay, and we're going to find out next week.